Hey everybody, David Costello here, founder and CEO of Jetpack Workflow and host of Growing Your Firm podcast. Today's guest is Gretl Siler. She's the owner of Lighthouse CPAs. And I had the fortune of hearing Gretl talk about her firm last fall. And the thing that really impressed me was, and we were talking right before the interview, is there's this moment in a firm owner's journey where they go from kind of initial traction. So they got the first set of clients, they have enough revenue to maybe cover their own income. Maybe they've even hired one or two people, but to kind of grow to the next level on the journey to seven figures or beyond seven figures, you have to shift and you have to gain new skills around systems development, and process development, and team management, and how do you keep everybody accountable, and how do you know what everybody's doing? And it's really a different skill set. And I think Gretl knocked that out of the park, and I loved her presentation from last year. So I figured had to invite her on to hear more about her journey growing her own firm. But first, Gretl, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not a paid endorsement to have a copy of our book behind you, but that's amazing. And I was joking beforehand, I feel so inadequate now in my little setup here. I just have a green wall. I don't have the book anywhere, so maybe I'll have to carry around the book. But for people that don't know about you or your firm, can you just give us a brief look, at Lighthouse CPAs, who do you serve? What's a typical client, and what do you typically, provide for them?
We serve a lot of small to mid-sized companies, but we take some startups. Some of our companies are very mature, some of our owners are older, but we want to make sure that we have a broad age range of clients. So we like to take some new businesses. They take a little bit of extra hand-holding, a little bit of extra work. But some of those are the guys that are going to be a client for 20 or 30 years. So you've got to kind of start with them and get them through that hand-holding, get them started up, help them with those first few months, first few years.
Yeah, and it's full service accounting, bookkeeping, payroll, and tax?
Yes, we do all of it. And we probably do even a little bit more because we spend some time with them trying to help them make sure that they understand things that they need to do with their business. And we have clients call us and go, should I take my Social Security yet? Should I go get this bank loan yet? Should I go do these things? So outside of maybe some of the normal questions that accounting firms might get.
Yeah, well, that's really neat. It sounds like you've developed that level of trust where they will call you and ask you about those questions. And what's the current firm size today? Like, where are you at with, whether you want to say head count, revenue, anything you want to share about like the size of the firm?
Well, we're doing about $500,000. I was thinking that we might jump to $1 million this year because I had a couple firms that I was trying to buy, but one of them just fell through today. So it'll get there.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the next 12 months, I imagine there's going to be even more firms to buy. So that's interesting. So you're at a place now, $500,000 revenue, where you're ready to buy firms.
Yes.
And I think for a lot of listeners, the concept of buying a firm sounds really, really exciting and really, really scary. And it's scary because they can't imagine doubling the amount of chaos they might have in their world, which is not where you're at. So what gave you the kind of freedom to say, I'm going to go out and buy firms? Like what's a typical week look like for you at this point that allows you to go out and hunt for firms that might be for sale?
Well, I have enough staff now that they do the majority of the work. I'm doing reviews of corporate returns. I review a few of the 1040s, but I have a team that actually takes the work and runs it through the process. And we use Jetpack and the tracking system to make sure that they go through all the steps, that they're checking everything. We have some checklists that we use, and it just helps keep the work flowing. So I'm not there at 7 in the morning until 11 o'clock at night, 6 days a week or 6.5 days a week trying to get the tax returns through.
Was that what it was like before? Was that like a fairly realistic scenario you were just talking about?
Well, that's what an awful lot of firms are like. They try and keep it so that there's no people hardly on staff, and they make themselves crazy doing all the work, and they can't grow because there's no room for them to grow at all.
Yeah. Well, and so what, did you always have that mindset, by the way, where you said, I need to remove myself from this process, or did you kind of stumble upon it, or kind of what was that journey like for you to start removing yourself from parts of the process?
Well, I knew as I was growing this firm that my intent was to grow it for 5 or 6 years, get it decently big, hopefully $1 million, get it so that it is flowing, so there's documented processes in place, so things go, and then I can turn around and sell it and retire. But if I'm the only one that does the work and all of the information about the clients and what we do for them and how we do it is all in my head, it makes it very hard to retire.
Yeah, I love the way you put that. I mean, you're developing a real asset when you put together process and systems that somebody else can run with in the business. Um, so you're right now you're the only stage you're doing it in the majority of the time is the review of 1040s and 1120s.
Pretty much, and then we meet with clients and do some tax planning. We're working on that whole new project called Profit First and getting ready to roll that out to our clients to help them become more profitable. So we're just looking for new services that we can provide to clients that are going to help them be more successful.
Yeah, and so from the team perspective, um, what does a typical week look like from a management perspective? Like, what are you looking at, or what questions are you thinking about from your team to know if they're on track or not? How often are you communicating with them? Like, what does that world look like?
Depending on the day, I may talk to somebody several times, but lots of times I'm just watching the jobs flowing through, making sure things are getting out, looking to see if we're meeting our deadlines. We're trying to turn everything around quickly. COVID-19 kind of slowed us down a lot, so we didn't meet all of the targets we wanted to, but we're getting caught back up. And we'd like to make sure that when work comes through the door, that it's back out the door within a week and we're done and finished and handled. So, we just try and keep track of the jobs that are in and starting to track down the jobs that aren't here yet and saying, hey, bring us your stuff.
Yeah, and you mentioned from a team perspective, you're looking at what's new work coming in, are the deadlines being met? Outside of that, so you're viewing that in Jetpack workflow. Do you have team meetings? Do you have one-on-ones? Do you have check-ins, or is it really just based off of need or when you see something stuck?
Lots of times it's when something's stuck. We're getting ready to start. We used to have in face-to-face meetings, but with face-to-face meetings and COVID-19, that kind of all stopped. We're kind of trying
Right.
to, even the people that are in the office, they're trying to stay separated from each other. But we did do a Zoom test meeting. We're trying to get all the way up to date with the technology, and the intent is to go to weekly Zoom meetings starting on Fridays so that we can just talk back and forth about what may have somebody stuck instead of just having individual meetings. We're also rolling out some things like screencast where we can take a document, talk it through, document what things we do with that piece of paper, how we read it, how we understand it, so that becomes a training tool for our employees.
Oh, interesting. That makes sense. And just for reference, how many team members do you have, or how many employees do you have?
I've got 4.
Okay, 4. So I love the concept. So, I mean, Friday you would have a team meeting. You're rolling that out this week. You would talk through the issues. Everybody would be on the call, so it sounds like they would be able to understand the issues everybody else is talking about. And then you have the screencast tool to not only give one-to-one training, but document it so you give it to everybody else as they onboard.
Yep, that's exactly it. And we've been working on getting everybody used to that whole concept so we can even send it to a client. There's so many times when we get a document from a client and we try and call them up and say, look, we don't understand some of these numbers on here, but if you can send the document back with a screencast that you can point to the different things that you've got questions on, stick it in an email and send it back to them. You don't have to play telephone tag with them anymore. They understand exactly what you're talking about. And you can get an answer back from them as to what is this? Why do we have this piece of paper? What is the information you're trying to convey to us?
Yeah. Looking back as you're initially building out your team, you now have 4 team members, so 5 including yourself. What are some lessons learned that you're like, gosh, I wish I would have known that in advance? For listeners that are maybe hiring, or maybe they have 2 and they're about to get to 4 employees, or they're also going to reach the $500,000 mark soon. What lessons learned have you kind of surfaced?
Sometimes one of the biggest issues is I'm probably kind-hearted, so I kind of hold people maybe a little bit longer than I should to try and give them a chance to get to be really good.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I think you have to look at things faster and just go, you're just not getting this. Yes, you can ask a question 1 or 2 or 3 times, but you know what? 4, 5, 6, you're probably not ever going to get it. And time to start over, because nobody hires 100% and has everybody stick.
Yeah. I don't know if this happens with you, but it's definitely happened with me as we've grown our head count. And I did the same thing, held on for people too long, but I always thought, what did I do wrong? Oh, I didn't train you enough. I don't know enough about X, Y, and Z. So I always went back and I said, well, what I'm going to try to improve so they get better, right? I'm going to go back and update the system so they get better. And then it's happened, more than once, less than 5 times, we'll call it. They never get better. they really were just the wrong fit. And I just kept thinking, I'm going to take all the ownership on my plate, on my shoulders, and fix it. But so often, like there's value in doing that, but most of the time it's just a bad fit from a team member.
Well, there's the whole concept of getting people in the right seat in the bus. Some people are wonderful people. You can see that they really want to do a good job, but they're just not in the right job. That job does not fit them. They struggle with it. They don't do well with it. And I always have to remind myself that, look, if you cut this person loose, they're going to go find the right job and be much happier. And you can go find then I can go find the right person to put in that position.
Yeah.
But
I love that point. Have you found, having gone through it a couple times, have you updated your hiring process to kind of weed out people that you now know wouldn't be a good fit?
lots of times you just can't, because some people interview wonderfully well, and then when it comes to showing up for work and doing whatever it is they're supposed to be doing, they can't do it. I think the hardest thing, though, is sometimes people come in and they don't interview very well, and you have to keep working on trying to get them relaxed enough and calm enough so you can actually figure out, will they be a good fit? Because some of those people can be really good workers, but sometimes it's tough to get through the fact that they're scared, they're nervous, they want the job, and get to the point where you can really see, are they going to do this?
That's a great point. That's a great point. There, whether it's hiring scorecards or there's the score method by Jeff Smart. Just because somebody interviews well doesn't mean they're a good fit, and just because they are not personable and eccentric and making jokes and maybe they're just a little quiet and introvert, still amazing for the job, right? So that's an amazing point. To transition slightly, because you said something really interesting, when you said you're going to buy a firm, you're ready to buy a firm. I want to take a look back, and you mentioned that you have all these jobs running through Jetpack, and by no means, and I said this before the interview, is this a commercial for Jetpack, but I want to ask you about the criteria you're using to buy a firm. But before we go into there, can you describe a little bit about how you're using Jetpack and the major benefits you're getting from the tool? And then we'll transition into like the criteria you're using to buy a firm, which I think goes a little bit hand in hand.
Yes, it does. In Jetpack, when we're creating jobs to work on, we're generally starting with a template, but we do a lot of repeat work for our clients, monthly accounting, quarterly payroll, taxes, whatever it is. And every single client is a little bit different. So we take that template, and once we assign it to the client, we go in and put very specific information about that client. If you've got a client that wants their pieces of paper back in a specific exact order, or they kind of freak out, you document it so that you can do that every time, you know? There's people like that. And sometimes you have situations where you've got a customer, and if a charge at a gas station is on John's card, it's supposed to go into this account, but if it's on Jack's credit card, it goes in that account. And by documenting it, it means if you have staff turnover, they can walk in, they can open up that job, and they go, oh, okay, that's why credit card charges are going different places. Or now I understand that these papers have to be in this particular order. And it's so easy when people walk out the door and quit or something, that they had all that information in their brain. Mm-hmm. And by getting it into Jetpack so that we know that this client wants this, they want it in this order, it gives us the ability to give them some custom service without having to have a completely custom process. We followed the Jetpack process, but we can get them what they want. We also lots of times use Jetpack to make sure that we've documented things like their nicknames. You know, so if George wants to be called Steve, we can call him Steve every time, you know, because the accounting software tells you, hey, his name is George, but that's not what he wants to be called. It makes sure that we know the best way to contact the client. Do they like email? Do they want a text? Do they want a phone call? How do we want to do them? And what other clients are they related to? Is this somebody's sister-in-law? Is this somebody that owns this business? So that we can cross-track everything and give them a personal touch. Even a new person knows a lot about the client to be able to take care of them. And so, let's see. Yeah.
Sorry, I was gonna say, you know, I love those scenarios and walking through it, because it's all the nuance of how you develop process. And, you know, we like to think there's one major single silver bullet process, but I love the thoughtfulness you put into saying each client, you know, we try to add levels of personalization for each client. I'm sure that helps with, you know, it makes them feel better, helps with retention, it helps with communication. What would you say, you know, to summarize, like the biggest benefits you've received from the tool, or ROI you've received from the tool?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that it has a lot of flexibility. It's very, very easy to add additional information to. Monthly accounting is monthly accounting, and so you do a lot of the same things for the clients, but it lets us be flexible for each client. And it's easy to do. We don't have to jump through hoops to make those kinds of changes to the system. I've seen some other practice management systems where you're going to have to go through 25 steps if you want to try and change anything. And here it's just click, click, click. Okay, now we've got some more information. We can do something. Yeah. Makes a big, big difference for us.
What would you be like? I'm just trying to think, like, how would you manage your firm without, you know, you have a team of 4 people. I don't know how you would track them. I mean, I'm obviously biased here, right? But I don't know how you would track it without it.
You know, people try and do it with Excel spreadsheets and things, and you can do that with 10 clients, 20 clients, 30 clients, but you get much more than that. You start to lose track of the little details that you want to have. And this way we can have the little details and still be able to say, hey, what payroll tax clients aren't done yet? Which ones are done? How are we doing? And look at the workload really quick too.
Yeah. Well, I promised everybody we would dive into the acquisition. And so I'm very curious, you know, and look, hey, and by the way, are you buying firms just in Panama City or virtual? Like, because if somebody's listening, maybe they're trying to sell. We could be matchmaker.
Virtual could be good. I just was looking at 2, and I've got one that's in a slightly different city about 2 hours from here that accepted my letter of intent, but the local one didn't. And I was kind of choosing both of those because the fit was going to give us the ability to hire one or two more people and cover them pretty well.
Mm.
But a lot of what we look at is what staff do we currently have? And then when I'm looking at a firm, I'm going, what kind of business do they have? Are we staffed right for it? What would we have to do staff-wise to be able to cover their work? Is their work going to make any peaks in our workload even worse? Or is it something that can help us level out some of our workload? And the key one is, are they charging enough money? Because you can find practices for sale all the time that are charging about a fourth of what they should be. And you can't buy them because you can't make too many changes the first year or so. And there's just no way you can quadruple everybody's prices. If that doesn't work.
I see. Yeah, that was going to be my question. It was like, do you want to buy firms with low prices so you can increase it and get your payback? But it sounds like if you do that, all the clients would leave and you would kind of burn down the asset that you just bought.
You do an awful lot of work for very little money for a few years, and you're still going to lose a lot of them because some of the ones, if they're really low priced, they're looking for the low price guy.
Yeah.
And they're going to leave you and find somebody who does it in their bedroom they'll do a 1040 for $50 and they'll do a corporate return for $200, and you just can't compete with that.
Yeah. So do you have a specific like profit margin in mind that would give you an indication that they're charging the right amount, or do you just straight up ask them what they charge for at 1120, and if it's below X dollar amount, you're like, this is a bad sign?
Well, generally, if it's through a broker, and these two particular ones you get a pretty good description of the firm where they give you average prices for 1040s and average prices for corporate returns and things. And you can look at it and go, is that in the ballpark? You know, if it's 10% low, you can probably get up to it within a year or two. But if it's way low, you just can't get there. And so if somebody has a business like that and they want to sell it, they're going to have to start increasing their prices right now every year for a while to make it a valuable asset.
Yeah.
And, you know, we teach our business owners that lots of times their business is their largest asset if they treat it as such. If they just treat it as a job, well, the day they quit working, they can just lock the door and walk away and have nothing. But if they treat it as a business and they figure out how to build it into a model that somebody else could walk in and run, then they've got a tremendously valuable asset.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And so the broker would deliver to you revenue, margin, prices of their services, head count,
Yes.
all those things. And by the way, are you allowed to say what broker you're using? Do you like them? Would you recommend them to other people listening?
Actually, there was a couple of them I was working with. One came through New Clients Inc., and I think they're called Thrivent Growth. And one of them was accounting APS, PAS.
That was another broker?
Yeah, but you know what? A lot of them are fairly similar.
Okay.
And sometimes you can find them directly. I've sent letters out sometimes just to all the accounting firms in the area saying, hey, I might be interested in buying. And it's surprising. You usually get one or two contacts back. And if you catch them before they go to the broker, not that I don't like brokers, but you can cut 10% out of the cost of the transaction.
I get you. And what are you seeing in terms of reasonable valuations? Is it like 1x revenue?
As long as their pricing is good market pricing and they've had the clients for a while.
What's a while mean? Like more than a year, 2 years, 5 years?
5 or 6 years. If the whole practice is only 1 or 2 years old, they may not stick as well.
Okay. I appreciate you coming on today. I have a final question for you, which is you have a stack of books behind you, and I know the one's Double Your Accounting Firm, which is great. Everybody should pick up a copy, of course. But aside from that, what's been the best book you've read this year, or what would you recommend if somebody's listening? What's a must-read book that they should pick up?
Actually, there's the two of them: Profit First and Fix This Next.
Okay, so you're a Mike Michalowicz fan, huh?
You know what? I've read some of his others and they didn't hit me the same way, but those two I just thought were full of actionable stuff that we can roll out to our clients that don't have business degrees, don't have those kinds of backgrounds, but can improve their business if they want to.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, we'll link it up in the show notes. We had Mike Michalowicz talk at our Cloud Accounting Summit. I didn't know if you had the chance to make it or not at the end of April. And we thought it was amazing. It was a 15-minute talk about Fix This Next. I think it was the day after, it was one day after the book was released. And he talks about it. And he talks about some of the, I think, frameworks in there. And the entire Jetpack team was blown away. We were talking with each other. So I can't believe, what a great concept and how articulate he was about it. So that's amazing. We'll link that up in the show notes. And if somebody's listening right now and they want to reach out to you, they want to thank you for coming on. Maybe they want to start you their firm. Who knows? What's the best way for them to connect with you?
They could probably reach me by email at Gretl, Gretl, at lighthousecpas.com, or the phone number at our office is 850-785-5254.
Awesome. And if you're outside right now, running around, skipping around, hopping around, you couldn't write down the book recommendation, some of the insights that Gretl was talking about today, we're going to link everything up at jetpackworkflow.com/blog, jetpackworkflow.com/blog. There'll be a 1,000 plus word write-up of everything today. And again, we're going to link up everything in the show notes, including the talk from Mike Michalowicz around his release day for Fix This Next from our summit. So we'll put that in the show notes. Gretl, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you, David.